She was just 24 when it began. A quiet, artistic soul living in a coastal town in Brazil, she had always been known for her expressive face. Her laugh was contagious, her eyes full of emotion, her smile warm and genuine. But everything changed the day her smile stopped being hers. It began innocently, a tiny twitch at the edge of her mouth that she brushed off. She figured it was stress, or maybe just fatigue. She had been juggling multiple art commissions and caring for her ill grandmother. But soon, the twitch became more pronounced. Then her cheeks tightened, pulling her lips upward into a fixed, eerie smile that never left her face. At first, she didn't panic. Maybe it was a dental issue, or a nerve that would relax over time. But weeks passed, and the smile grew wider, stranger, unnatural. She looked in the mirror and no longer recognized herself. Her expression no longer matched what she felt inside. Even when she was terrified, anxious, or devastated, her mouth remained stretched in a grotesque grin. The kind of smile you'd expect to see on a mask, not a living person. Family and friends initially found it amusing. They joked that she must be the happiest woman alive. Some even praised her for always being so positive. But she wasn't positive. She was horrified. Every attempt to frown, to relax her face, to cry, was met with the same static expression. As her muscles grew tighter and the contractions stronger, her ability to speak clearly began to fade. Her words slurred. Eating became painful. She frequently bit her tongue or the inside of her cheeks. She couldn't blink properly, and her eyes became dry and inflamed. She started wearing glasses not because she needed them, but because it made it easier to hide. At night, her facial muscles remained locked. She slept with a smile that made her look like a mannequin, or worse, a corpse in a horror film. She visited clinic after clinic, neurologists, dentists, psychologists, and general practitioners. Most were baffled. A few dismissed her entirely. One doctor suggested it was psychosomatic. Another accused her of seeking attention. Someone even asked if she had gotten Botox injections that had gone wrong. Meanwhile, her condition worsened. The smile deepened. The muscles in her face twitched and spasmed constantly, creating pain she could never express outwardly. Her emotional health began to spiral. Every conversation became a struggle. Every interaction felt like a performance she didn't agree to. She stopped going out. She isolated herself, terrified of how people reacted. Strangers would either mock her or give her uncomfortable stares. She once overheard a man in a supermarket say, "She's laughing at everyone." What a freak. But she wasn't laughing, she was breaking. It took nearly a year before a neurologist finally ordered a full MRI of her brain and found the truth. A lesion deep in her brainstem, specifically along the pathways that control voluntary facial muscle movement. The diagnosis: facial paralysis, agitans. A condition so rare that fewer than 50 cases had ever been documented. The cause? Likely a combination of genetic vulnerability and a possible inflammatory response. Perhaps an old viral infection had silently wreaked havoc on her nervous system. The result was a constant overfiring of the motor neurons controlling her smile muscles, causing them to contract involuntarily 24/7. The irony crushed her. People envied smiles. They saw smiling as a sign of joy, health, and confidence. But for her, it was a prison. Every joyful photo, every happy face emoji, every well-meaning comment felt like a slap. She wasn't happy. She was exhausted. She was angry. And more than anything, she wanted her real face back. The treatment plan was complex. Surgery wasn't viable due to the location of the lesion. Instead, doctors tried botulinum toxin, Botox, injections to paralyze the affected facial muscles temporarily. The results were mixed. The first session brought a wave of relief. For a few weeks, she could feel her cheeks again. Her lips softened. Her face, though weakened, finally matched her motions. She cried, not from despair, but from finally seeing her reflection without the haunted grin. But like all temporary treatments, it didn't last. The smile returned as other muscle groups began to compensate. The second and third rounds of injections were less effective. Her face began to resist the treatment, adapting in strange ways, twisting the smile into even more rigid positions. At one point, she developed a partial facial droop on one side, creating a lopsided, almost Joker-like appearance. It frightened her so much she stopped leaving the house altogether. Mirrors became enemies. Cameras were forbidden. Her phone screen remained black. She avoided eye contact, even with her family. Every time she passed a window or mirror, she looked away. It wasn't just a facial condition anymore, it was psychological trauma, deeply rooted and growing stronger by the day. Depression settled in like a shadow. She no longer painted. Her sketchbooks gathered dust. She stopped listening to music, stopped responding to messages. Even her voice, once full of laughter and emotion, became dull, lifeless. She whispered, as if speaking too loudly would make her smile wider. At her lowest point, she considered ending her life. The idea of spending the next 40 or 50 years imprisoned in this grinning mask was unbearable. But something inside her held on, a small, defiant spark. The artist who once believed that every face tells a story, even the broken ones. That spark led her to the internet, to rare disease forums, to neurology blogs, to anonymous support groups where people shared invisible illnesses no one else understood. There she found others like her, not with the same disorder, but with the same feeling of being misunderstood, misjudged, and unseen. Slowly she began writing again. First short messages, then longer posts. Eventually she penned a full essay titled, "The Smile That Lied." A haunting, vivid account of her condition and its psychological toll. The piece went viral within the rare disease community. People around the world reached out, some with similar conditions, some with empathy, and some with power. A neurologist in Europe who had worked on brainstem stimulation reached out. He offered her a spot in an experimental trial involving targeted neurostimulation therapy. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it offered measurable improvement. The facial spasms didn't stop completely, but they lessened in intensity and frequency. Most importantly, she began to regain some control. Not over her muscles, but over her life. Today, she still lives with facial paralysis agitans, but she no longer hides. She now speaks publicly about her journey, at medical conferences, on podcasts, and through her art. Her paintings are no longer portraits of perfect smiles. They are honest, raw, and often unsettling. She paints expressions that don't match the emotions beneath them. Faces that look cheerful while crying. Mouths smiling over broken eyes. She calls them emotional contradictions. Because that's what she lived. A contradiction. A woman who smiled through pain, not by choice, but by fate. Her story forces us to question everything we assume about appearance and emotion. And it reminds us that sometimes the most painful stories are told behind the brightest smiles.